Captain Marcus Chun had been unconscious for 3 days when the blue light pulled him from the wreckage of his fighter ship. One moment he was floating in the cold vacuum of space, his oxygen running dangerously low, and the next he found himself standing in a massive crystalline chamber that stretched beyond his vision. The walls pulsed with an inner light that seemed alive, shifting between deep blues and brilliant whites. Strange symbols floated in the air around him, glowing softly as they drifted past his face. Marcus tried to move but found his body held in place by some invisible force. He could breathe, though, and the air tasted clean with a hint of something floral. "Do not fear, human warrior," a voice echoed through the chamber, speaking perfect English despite its alien origin. The voice was feminine, melodious, yet carried an authority that made Marcus's spine straighten automatically. "You have been brought here because your people's war has caught our attention." Marcus looked around frantically, trying to locate the source of the voice. His military training kicked in as he assessed his situation. No visible weapons, no obvious exits, and he was completely at the mercy of whoever had brought him here. The last thing he remembered was the Zephyrian attack fleet overwhelming his squadron near Earth's outer defense grid. "Where am I?" Marcus called out, his voice echoing strangely in the vast space. "What happened to my ship, my crew?" The air in front of him began to shimmer, and slowly a figure materialized. Marcus had seen many alien species during humanity's expansion into space, but nothing had prepared him for what stood before him. She was tall, nearly 8 feet in height, with skin that seemed to be made of living starlight. Her features were elegant and sharp, with large eyes that held the depth of galaxies. She wore robes that flowed like liquid mercury, and a crown of what appeared to be crystallized lightning sat upon her head. "I am Queen Zyreleth of the Astral Dominion," she said, taking a step closer to Marcus. "Your ship was destroyed, but we retrieved you moments before your life support failed. As for your crew, they perished when the Zephyrians breached your hull." Marcus felt a stab of grief at the confirmation of his fears, but he pushed it down. There would be time to mourn later. Right now, he needed to understand why he was here and what this alien queen wanted with him. "Why save me?" he asked directly. "And why can you speak my language?" Queen Zyreleth smiled, an expression that was both beautiful and terrifying. "We have been watching your species for some time, Marcus Chun. Your people call it humanity, but we know you by a different name. We call you the Unyielding Flame because in all our centuries of observation, we have never seen a species fight with such determination against impossible odds." She gestured, and the air around them filled with holographic images. Marcus saw scenes of human history, ancient battles, world wars, the first steps on Mars, and the recent conflicts with hostile alien species. Each image showed humans facing overwhelming challenges and somehow finding a way to survive and grow stronger. "The Zephyrians are not your only enemy," the Queen continued. "They are merely the latest in a long line of species that seek to extinguish what they see as a threat. But they do not understand what we have learned. Humanity's greatest strength is not your technology or your numbers. It is your refusal to surrender, even when facing certain death." Marcus watched as the images shifted to show massive alien fleets, each one representing a different species, all converging on human space. His heart sank as he realized the true scope of what humanity was facing. The Zephyrian attack was just the beginning. "You're telling me we're about to be wiped out?" Marcus said grimly. "So why bring me here? Why not just let it happen?" The Queen's expression grew serious, her galactic eyes focusing intently on Marcus. "Because, Captain Chun, we have a proposition for your species. One that could change the fate of not just humanity, but the entire galaxy." She waved her hand, and the images around them changed to show a massive structure floating in space. It was clearly artificial, larger than any space station Marcus had ever seen, with technology that seemed to blend organic curves with crystalline geometry. Ships moved around it like schools of fish, but even from the holographic distance, Marcus could tell they were enormous. "This is the heart of Dominion, the seat of our power. From here we have watched civilizations rise and fall for millions of years. We have seen species achieve greatness only to destroy themselves through pride and aggression. We have seen others show promise only to be crushed by those who came before them. Marcus stared at the structure, trying to comprehend its size and complexity. What does this have to do with humanity? Everything, the Queen replied. Because for the first time in our long existence, we have found a species that we believe could be our equals. Not our subjects, not our servants, but our partners in something greater than either of us could achieve alone. The invisible force holding Marcus in place suddenly released him, and he stumbled forward before regaining his balance. The Queen watched him with what might have been amusement as he tested his freedom of movement. "You're free to move about this chamber," she said. "But know that you cannot leave until you have heard our full offer. The fate of your people hangs in the balance, and the decision you make here will echo through the stars for ages to come." Marcus looked around the vast chamber once more, then back at the alien Queen who claimed to hold humanity's future in her hands. He thought of Earth, of the billions of people going about their daily lives, unaware that their existence might depend on whatever conversation was about to unfold in this strange place between the stars. "All right," he said, squaring his shoulders. "I'm listening. What exactly are you offering?" Queen Zeraleth moved gracefully across the crystalline floor, her robes flowing behind her like liquid starlight. Marcus watched every movement, his military mind cataloging details even as he struggled to process the magnitude of what she had already revealed. The chamber around them seemed to respond to her presence, the walls pulsing brighter as she passed. "Tell me, Captain Chen," she began, turning to face him with those galaxy-deep eyes. "What do you know of the ancient wars that shaped this galaxy?" Marcus shook his head. "Human records only go back about 500 years since we first left Earth's solar system. We've encountered evidence of older civilizations, ruins and abandoned technology, but nothing concrete about any ancient wars." The Queen nodded as if she had expected this answer. "That is because the victors of those wars made sure to erase all traces of what came before. The galaxy you know today is built on the bones of countless civilizations that were deemed unworthy by those who came to power." She gestured again, and the air filled with new images. This time, Marcus saw massive battles between fleets of ships unlike anything in current galactic civilization. The vessels were organic-looking, covered in what appeared to be living armor, and they fought with weapons that seemed to tear reality itself apart. 2 million years ago, a species called the Harbingers declared themselves the rightful rulers of all intelligent life. They possessed technology that bordered on the mystical, and they used it to subjugate every other species they encountered. Those who submitted became slaves. Those who resisted were exterminated. Marcus watched in fascination and horror as the images showed world after world being consumed by strange energies, their surfaces becoming lifeless husks. What happened to them? The Harbingers, I mean. "They made a crucial error," the Queen replied, her voice carrying a note of satisfaction. "They believed that power alone could maintain their empire forever. They became complacent, relying entirely on their advanced technology while allowing their actual capabilities to stagnate. When the first rebellion began, they were caught off guard. The images shifted to show a different kind of battle. This time, various alien species fought together against the Harbinger forces, using primitive weapons and tactics but displaying incredible coordination and determination. Marcus recognized something familiar in the way they fought, the same desperate courage he had seen in human conflicts. "The rebellion lasted for 300 years, Queen Zeraleth continued. "Species that had been enemies put aside their differences to fight against the common oppressor. They learned to adapt, to improvise, to find ways to turn the Harbinger's own technology against them." "Sound familiar?" Marcus nodded slowly. "It sounds like every underdog victory in human history. David against Goliath, the American Revolution, the resistance movements of World War II. "Exactly. And that is why we have been watching your species so carefully. You see, Captain Chun, the Astral Dominion, was born from that ancient rebellion. We were among the species that fought against the Harbingers, and when their empire finally fell, We inherited much of their knowledge and technology. The Queen moved to stand directly in front of Marcus, and he could feel the power radiating from her like heat from a star. But we also inherited their enemies. You see, the Harbingers did not simply disappear when their empire fell. Many fled to the dark spaces between galaxies, and for 2 million years, they have been rebuilding their strength. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. And they're coming back. They have already returned, the Queen confirmed. The attacks on your people, the Zephyrian invasion, the mysterious disappearances of entire human colonies in the Outer Rim, these are not random acts of aggression. They are the first moves in a campaign to test humanity's capabilities. The images around them changed once more, showing star maps with red indicators spreading like a plague across human space. Marcus saw the pattern now, the way the attacks had been escalating and spreading, probing for weaknesses while avoiding major population centers. The Harbingers remember their defeat, Queen Zyrleth explained. They learned from it. This time, they are not revealing themselves until they are certain of victory. They are using other species as proxies, promising them power and territory in exchange for testing potential threats. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, trying to process the implications. So humanity is being evaluated. But why us specifically? There are plenty of other species in the galaxy. The Queen smiled, and for the first time it seemed genuinely warm rather than intimidating. Because, Captain Chun, in all the time we have observed your species, you have displayed the same qualities that allowed the ancient rebellion to succeed. When faced with superior enemies, humans do not surrender. They adapt. They learn. They find ways to turn disadvantages into strengths. She gestured to a new set of images showing human military actions over the past century. Marcus saw battles where outnumbered human forces had used unconventional tactics to defeat larger alien fleets. Instances where human engineers had reverse-engineered captured technology in record time. And countless examples of individual humans performing impossible feats when protecting their people. The Harbingers fear this quality above all else, the Queen continued. It is the one thing their technology cannot overcome. They can build bigger ships, more powerful weapons, faster computers, but they cannot replicate the human spirit that refuses to accept defeat. Marcus felt a surge of pride mixed with overwhelming responsibility. So what exactly are you proposing? An alliance against these Harbingers. More than an alliance, Queen Zyrleth replied. We are offering to share our knowledge, our technology, our strategic understanding of the enemy. But more importantly, we are offering something that no species has possessed for 2 million years. She raised her hand and a small object materialized above her palm. It looked like a crystal, but as Marcus watched, he could see that it contained swirling energies that seemed to move in patterns too complex for his mind to follow. This is a fragment of command, she explained. It contains the distilled knowledge and power of the ancient rebellion. With it, humanity would gain access to technologies and abilities that could level the playing field against the Harbingers. Marcus stared at the crystal, feeling its importance without fully understanding it. What's the catch? There's always a catch. The Queen's expression grew serious again. The catch, Captain Chun, is that accepting this gift would change humanity forever. Your species would become something more than you are now. But you would also inherit the burden of standing against an enemy that has been preparing for this moment for 2 million years. She closed her hand and the crystal disappeared. The choice must be made by humanity as a whole, but it must be made quickly. Our intelligence suggests that the Harbinger fleet will begin their main assault within 1 Earth year. After that, no amount of advanced technology will be enough to save your people. Marcus felt the weight of every human life pressing down on his shoulders. And if we refuse? Then you face the Harbingers with your current capabilities, the Queen replied simply. We will not interfere either way. We learned long ago that evolution cannot be forced. It must be chosen. The crystalline chamber fell silent as Marcus contemplated the impossible decision that had been placed before him. Save humanity by transforming it into something unknown, or maintain their independence and face extinction. In the distance, he could hear something that sounded like the whisper of stellar winds, reminding him that somewhere beyond this strange place, Earth continued its orbit, unaware that its fate hung in the balance. Marcus paced the length of the crystalline chamber, his boots echoing against the translucent floor. Queen Zyraleth had given him time to think, but the magnitude of the decision weighed heavily on his mind. How could one man speak for all of humanity? How could he choose between certain transformation and probable extinction? I need to understand what this transformation would actually mean, Marcus said finally, stopping to face the alien queen. You say humanity would become something more, but what does that look like in practical terms? Queen Zyraleth studied him for a moment, her starlight features thoughtful. Perhaps it would be better to show you rather than tell you. But first, you must prove that humanity truly possesses the qualities we believe they do. The chamber around them began to shift and change. The walls became transparent, revealing a vast space filled with swirling nebulae and distant stars. In the center of this cosmic arena, a series of platforms materialized, each one presenting a different challenge. This is a test that we have given to every species we have ever considered for partnership, the Queen explained. It is not a test of strength or intelligence alone, but of the essential character that defines a people. You will face 3 trials, each designed to reveal a different aspect of your species' nature. Marcus looked at the floating platforms with a mixture of apprehension and determination. And if I fail? Then you return to your people with our knowledge of what is coming, but without our aid. They will face their destiny alone, as so many others have before them. The first platform lowered itself to the chamber floor. On its surface, Marcus could see what appeared to be a complex holographic simulation. As he stepped onto it, the simulation activated, surrounding him with the bridge of a human battleship dot around him. Holographic crew members moved with urgent purpose. Alarms blared, and through the viewscreen, Marcus could see a massive enemy fleet approaching. The ship's captain, a woman with commander's stripes, turned to him with desperate eyes. "Sir, we've lost contact with the evacuation transports," she reported. "The enemy will reach the civilian ships in 10 minutes. We can intercept them, but our ship won't survive the encounter. We're the only thing standing between them and 50,000 innocent people." Marcus felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders as he realized this was his test. The simulation was so realistic that he could smell the recycled air of the ship and feel the vibration of the engines through the deck. "What are our weapons status and crew complement?" "Full weapons, 800 crew aboard," the tactical officer reported. "The enemy fleet has us outgunned 5-1, but their formation suggests they're not expecting resistance." Marcus studied the tactical display, his mind racing through possibilities. This was exactly the kind of impossible situation that had defined human military history. Superior enemy forces, innocent lives at stake, and a decision that would cost lives no matter what choice he made. "Launch all fighters to harass their flanks," Marcus ordered. "Helm, take us directly into the center of their formation." "Tactical, prepare to overload our main reactor on my command." The crew looked at him with a mixture of fear and admiration. They understood what he was planning, a suicide run designed to take out as many enemy ships as possible and buy time for the civilians to escape. "Sir, if we overload the reactor in their formation, the explosion might damage some of our own evacuation ships," the tactical officer warned. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of every life in his hands. "Calculate the blast radius. Position us so that the explosion will create a debris field between the enemy survivors and the evacuation route. Our people get away clean?" As the simulation played out, Marcus watched his ship dive into the enemy formation like a lance of fire. The reactor overload tore through space, taking out 6 enemy vessels and creating exactly the barrier he had hoped for. The evacuation ships escaped while the remaining enemy forces regrouped, the simulation faded, and Marcus found himself back in the crystalline chamber. Queen Zyraleth nodded approvingly. "The first trial test sacrifice," she explained. "Whether a species will give up everything to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Your people passed this test long ago in our observations, but it was necessary to see if you personally embodied this quality. The second platform descended, this one containing what appeared to be a laboratory filled with alien technology. As Marcus stepped onto it, he found himself in the role of a human scientist examining captured enemy equipment. The holographic scenario presented him with a piece of advanced alien technology that could revolutionize human warfare. However, the research notes indicated that reverse engineering it would require experimenting on captured alien prisoners, causing them significant suffering in the process. A holographic admiral appeared, pressuring Marcus to proceed with the experiments. Doctor, this technology could end the war and save millions of human lives. A few alien prisoners' suffering is a small price to pay for that kind of advantage. Marcus examined the alien device, understanding its incredible potential. The technology could indeed change the course of the war. But as he looked at the research protocols, he saw that they would essentially torture sentient beings for information. No, Marcus said firmly. We find another way. There has to be a solution that doesn't require us to become the monsters we're fighting against. He spent the next several hours in the simulation working with the research team to find alternative methods. It was slower, more difficult, and required creative thinking rather than brute force. But eventually they managed to unlock the technology's secrets, without causing unnecessary harm to the prisoners. When the second simulation ended, Queen Zyraleth's expression had grown more thoughtful. The second trial tests moral strength, she said. Whether a species will maintain its values even when survival is at stake. Many species fail this test, believing that extreme circumstances justify any action. The third platform was different from the others. Instead of technology or weapons, it contained what appeared to be a simple garden with alien plants and a small stream. As Marcus stepped onto it, he found himself in the role of a human diplomat meeting with a species humanity had never encountered before. The aliens in this simulation were clearly primitive compared to humans, with technology centuries behind Earth's standard. They were also sitting on resources that humanity desperately needed. The easy solution would be to simply take what was needed, perhaps offering token compensation or empty promises. Instead, Marcus found himself spending days in the simulation learning about the alien culture, understanding their needs and fears, and working out a trade agreement that benefited both species. It required patience, empathy, and a willingness to see the aliens as equals despite their technological disadvantage. When the final simulation ended, Marcus stood in the center of the chamber, feeling emotionally drained but oddly proud. He had been tested in ways that went beyond simple combat or intelligence, and he felt that he had represented humanity's best qualities. Queen Zyraleth approached him, her expression now showing something that might have been respect. The third trial tests wisdom, she explained. Whether a species can see beyond its immediate needs to build something lasting. Whether they can recognize the value in all intelligent life, not just their own. She gestured, and the three platforms merged into a single dais that rose to meet them. Captain Chun, your species has passed all three trials as we suspected they would. But more importantly, you have demonstrated that individual humans can embody the best of what your species represents. Marcus felt a surge of pride mixed with the continuing weight of responsibility. So what happens now? Do I get to see what humanity would become? The Queen smiled, and this time it was filled with anticipation. Now, Captain Chun, you get to experience it firsthand, because the transformation is not something that can be explained or shown. It is something that must be lived. The chamber around them began to glow brighter, and Marcus felt something fundamental shift in the fabric of reality itself. Whatever was about to happen, he knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The light that filled the crystalline chamber was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. It didn't come from any external source, but seemed to emerge from the very atoms of the air around him. As the radiance intensified, he felt something stirring deep within his consciousness, as if doors in his mind that he had never known existed were slowly beginning to open. What's happening to me? Marcus gasped, his voice sounding strange in his own ears. The words seemed to carry harmonics that hadn't been there before, resonating with frequencies that touched something primal in the chamber's crystalline structure. Queen, Zyraleth moved closer, her form becoming more radiant as the transformation progressed. You are becoming what humanity always had the potential to be, she explained. The fragment of command does not change your species, Captain Chun. It awakens capabilities that have been dormant within human consciousness. Since your earliest ancestors first looked up at the stars, Marcus felt his perception expanding in ways that defied description. Where before he had seen only the chamber's crystalline walls, now he could perceive the intricate energy patterns that flowed through them like blood through veins. The quantum structure of matter itself became visible to him, revealing the underlying connections that bound all things together. But it wasn't just his vision that was changing. His mind felt larger somehow, capable of processing information at speeds that would have been impossible moments before. Complex mathematical equations that would have taken him hours to solve now resolved themselves in seconds. And he could feel his consciousness touching something vast and ancient, the collective knowledge of the rebellion that had destroyed the Harbingers 2 million years ago. The pain will pass, the Queen assured him as Marcus staggered under the weight of the expanding awareness. What you are experiencing is your neural pathways adapting to handle information in ways they were never designed for. Your ancestors carried the genetic potential for this evolution, but it required the right catalyst to activate. Through the overwhelming cascade of new sensations, Marcus began to understand what was happening. The human brain, with its billions of neural connections, had always possessed the raw computational power needed for advanced consciousness. What it had lacked was the proper framework to utilize that power. The fragment of command provided that framework, unlocking abilities that had been waiting dormant in human DNA. Since the species first evolved. As the transformation reached its peak, Marcus found himself no longer limited to his physical senses. He could perceive the quantum foam that underlay all reality, the probability waves that determined the behavior of subatomic particles, and most incredibly, the information streams that connected all conscious minds across the galaxy. I can feel them, he whispered, his voice now carrying undertones that seemed to make the chamber itself resonate in sympathy. Other minds, not just human, but every thinking being in the galaxy. Queen Zyraleth nodded. You are experiencing what we call the consciousness web, the invisible network of quantum entanglement that connects all sentient life. The Harbingers once used this network to control their subjects, but the ancient rebellion learned to turn it into a source of strength and unity. Marcus could indeed feel other human minds now, distant but unmistakable. Scientists working in laboratories on Earth, soldiers fighting in the outer colonies, children playing in the parks of Mars. Each consciousness was unique, like a distinctive musical note. But together they formed a symphony of thought and emotion that was breathtakingly beautiful. But there were other notes in that cosmic symphony, discordant and alien. Dark presences that moved through the web like predators, seeking to dominate and consume rather than participate in the greater harmony. Marcus instinctively knew these were the Harbinger agents, still working to prepare for their master's return. They're already here, he said, his enhanced perception tracking the enemy infiltrators across human space. Harbinger servants. They've been studying us, learning our weaknesses, preparing for the invasion. Yes, the Queen confirmed. But now you can see them as we do. They cannot hide from consciousness that has been properly awakened. This is why we needed to offer this gift to humanity now, before the final assault begins. Marcus felt his awareness expanding further, touching the edges of something vast and malevolent beyond the galaxy's rim. The true Harbinger fleet was there, millions of ships carrying technologies that could unmake planets with a thought. But he also sensed something else, fear. The ancient enemy was afraid of what humanity might become. They remember the last rebellion, Marcus realized. They know what happened when organic consciousness evolved beyond their ability to control it. The Queen's smile was radiant with pride and anticipation. Exactly. The Harbinger's greatest strength is also their greatest weakness. They have achieved technological perfection, but in doing so, they have lost the ability to grow, to adapt, to evolve. They are powerful but static, while organic consciousness is always changing, always finding new ways to overcome obstacles. As Marcus's transformation stabilized, he began to understand the true scope of what had been offered to humanity. The enhanced consciousness wasn't just about increased intelligence or new sensory capabilities. It was about connection, the ability to link human minds together in ways that would make them stronger than the sum of their parts. If all humans underwent this awakening, he said slowly, we wouldn't just be individuals with enhanced abilities. We'd be a collective consciousness that could coordinate resistance efforts across the entire galaxy simultaneously. Now you begin to understand, Queen Zyrleth replied. But the choice still remains yours to make. This transformation cannot be forced upon your people. Each human must choose to accept the awakening willingly, or it will fail. And the choice must be made by your entire species, not just a few individuals. Marcus felt the weight of that responsibility settling upon him once again, but now it was different. With his enhanced consciousness, he could perceive the threads of possibility that stretched out from this moment. Some led to humanity's extinction, others to transformation and victory, and still others to outcomes he couldn't yet comprehend. How do I convince 8 billion people to accept something they don't understand? He asked. How do I make them see what I can see now? The Queen gestured, and the air around them filled with new images, not holograms this time, but direct information transfer through the consciousness. Webb, Marcus saw the history of other species who had faced this same choice. Some had embraced the transformation and joined the ancient alliance. Others had refused and eventually fallen to various threats. A few had tried to take a middle path and ended up neither fully human nor fully awakened. You don't convince them with words, the Queen explained. You show them through demonstration. When they see what awakened humans can accomplish, when they witness the power of unified consciousness working for the common good, the choice will become clear. Marcus nodded, understanding beginning to dawn. I go back to Earth. I help defend against the current attacks using these new abilities. When people see what's possible, when they understand what's at stake, then we can make the choice as a species. Precisely. But remember, Captain Chun, time is running short. The Harbinger fleet grows closer with each passing day, and once they arrive in force, no amount of evolution will be enough to save your people. The awakening must be complete before then. As Marcus prepared to return to his own reality, he felt the crystalline chamber beginning to fade around him. But he was no longer the same man who had been pulled from the wreckage of his fighter ship. He carried within him the potential to transform not just himself, but all of humanity. The Queen's voice followed him as the transport beam began to take hold. Remember, Captain, your people's greatest strength has always been their refusal to surrender. Show them that even evolution itself can be conquered through determination and unity. As the cosmic chamber disappeared and the familiar stars of human space came into view, Marcus knew that the real battle was just beginning. But for the first time since the Harbinger threat had been revealed, he felt something that had been absent before: hope. Marcus materialized on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship, Endeavor, in a cascade of blue light that made the entire crew step back in alarm. Admiral Sarah Rodriguez, his commanding officer, had her sidearm halfway out of its holster before recognition dawned in her eyes. Marcus? Dear God, we thought you were dead. Your ship was destroyed 3 days ago, and we found no survivors in the wreckage. She holstered her weapon but kept her distance, studying him with the wariness of a career military officer who had learned to expect the unexpected. I was dead. In a sense, Marcus replied, his voice carrying those strange new harmonics that made the bridge equipment hum in response. But I've been given a second chance, and more importantly, I've been given knowledge that could save our entire species. As Marcus spoke, his enhanced consciousness was already reaching out through the consciousness web, touching the minds of the crew around him. He wasn't invading their thoughts, That would have been a violation of everything the awakening represented. Instead, he was simply making himself known, letting them feel the presence of an evolved human consciousness. The effect was immediate and startling. Every person on the bridge suddenly felt a sense of connection they had never experienced before. It wasn't telepathy exactly, but rather an awareness of belonging to something larger than themselves. For the first time in their lives, they truly understood what it meant to be part of the human family. What the hell just happened? Lieutenant Chang gasped, staring at Marcus with wide eyes. I could feel ... something like you were showing us who we really are. Admiral Rodriguez's military training kept her focused despite the strange sensations. Report, Captain. Where have you been, and what happened to change you? Marcus quickly explained his encounter with Queen Zyraleth and the Astral Dominion, the revelation about the Harbingers and the choice that now faced humanity. As he spoke, he let small amounts of enhanced consciousness flow through his words, allowing the crew to experience fragments of what he had seen and felt. You're talking about evolution on demand, Dr. Yates. The ship's chief science officer said when Marcus finished his explanation. The transformation you're describing would fundamentally alter human consciousness itself. The implications are staggering. The implications of not accepting this gift are extinction, Marcus replied firmly. Admiral, with your permission, I'd like to demonstrate what awakened consciousness can accomplish. There's a Harbinger infiltrator aboard this ship. Every person on the bridge tensed. The idea that enemy agents had penetrated Earth's flagship was terrifying beyond measure. Admiral Rodriguez immediately moved to activate the ship's security protocols, but Marcus raised a hand to stop her. Standard security sweeps won't detect this one, he explained. Harbinger servants aren't physical infiltrators. They're consciousness parasites that attach themselves to susceptible minds and influence their host's decisions without being detected. But awakened consciousness can see them clearly. Marcus closed his eyes and extended his enhanced perception throughout the ship. The Endeavor's crew of 3,000 appeared to his consciousness like points of light in a vast network. Most burned with the clear, honest flame of true human awareness. But in the engineering section, he found what he was looking for, a human mind that carried a dark passenger. Chief Engineer Nakamura, Marcus said, opening his eyes. He's been compromised for approximately 6 months. The parasite has been using him to introduce subtle flaws into our weapon systems and defensive protocols. Nothing obvious enough to be detected, but enough to give enemy forces a significant advantage in combat. Admiral Rodriguez immediately contacted security, but Marcus stopped her again. Don't arrest him, he said. Let me try something else. This could show you exactly what awakened consciousness is capable of. Before anyone could object, Marcus projected his consciousness through the ship's communication systems, speaking directly to every crew member simultaneously. But more than speaking, he was sharing, letting them experience fragments of the awakening, showing them glimpses of humanity's true potential. The effect was extraordinary. Throughout the ship, people began to understand things they had never grasped before. Scientists suddenly saw solutions to problems that had puzzled them for years. Engineers intuited improvements to systems they had considered perfected. And most importantly, every crew member became aware of the connection they shared with their fellow humans. In the engineering section, Chief Nakamura suddenly cried out in alarm and confusion. The consciousness parasite that had been feeding off his mind for months was suddenly exposed to the light of awakened human awareness. Like a parasite exposed to sunlight, it withered and died, leaving Nakamura free but shaken by the realization of what had been done to him. I remember now, Nakamura's voice came through the communication system, filled with horror and relief. The dreams, the strange compulsions to modify systems in ways that didn't make sense. It's been influencing me for months, and I never knew. On the bridge, the crew stared at Marcus with a mixture of awe and apprehension. What he had just accomplished, reaching every mind on the ship simultaneously, exposing and destroying an undetectable enemy agent, and giving everyone a taste of enhanced consciousness, would have been impossible for any normal human. This is just the beginning, Marcus explained to the stunned officers. With full awakening, every human becomes capable of this level of awareness and connection. We could coordinate military operations across the entire galaxy in real time. We could detect and eliminate Harbinger infiltrators anywhere in human space. We could share knowledge and discoveries instantaneously across all colonies and research facilities. Dr. Yates was furiously taking notes, her scientific mind racing to understand the implications. The computational power alone would be incredible. If human consciousness could truly network in the way you're describing, we could solve problems that would normally take supercomputers years to process, but at what cost? Admiral Rodriguez asked, voicing the concern that was weighing on everyone's minds. You're talking about fundamentally changing what it means to be human. Once we take this step, there's no going back. Marcus nodded gravely. That's true. Awakened humans are still human, but they're human in the way our species was always meant to be. The question isn't whether this change is significant, it is. The question is whether we choose evolution or extinction. To demonstrate his point, Marcus shared through the consciousness web a vision of what was approaching. The crew experienced a terrifying glimpse of the true Harbinger fleet, millions of ships, carrying weapons that could sterilize entire star systems. They felt the malevolent intelligence behind the invasion, ancient and implacable, viewing humanity as nothing more than an infestation to be eliminated. But Marcus also showed them what awakened humanity could become. They saw visions of human consciousness expanded across the galaxy, of colonies connected by bonds stronger than any physical communication network, of scientific discoveries made through collective insight that no individual mind could achieve alone. The choice has to be made by everyone, Marcus concluded. Not just military personnel or government officials, but every human being. Children, elderly, civilians, everyone. Because the awakening only works if it's freely chosen by the entire species. Admiral Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment, weighing everything she had learned. Finally, she turned to her communication officer. Open a priority channel to Earth Command, Colonial Administration, and all fleet commanders. It's time to bring this to the people who need to make the decision. As the Endeavor's communication systems came alive with urgent transmissions, Marcus felt a sense of both hope and terrible urgency. Through his enhanced consciousness, he could perceive the Harbinger fleet growing closer each day. Time was running out, and humanity's choice would determine not just their own fate, but the future of every free species in the galaxy. The awakening had begun, but the real test was yet to come. Could 8 billion humans, scattered across dozens of worlds and countless different cultures, unite in a single decision that would transform their species forever? The answer would determine whether humanity joined the cosmic community as equals, or disappeared into the dark pages of galactic history as just another species that had failed to evolve. When evolution was their only hope for survival. The Washington arrived at the Brisbane's position just as the first Kethmori raider began its boarding approach. The insectoid vessel latched onto the human cruiser's hull with organic grappling claws, preparing to breach the armor and pour warriors into the ship's corridors. Admiral Chun's flagship opened fire immediately. Plasma bolts tearing chunks from the alien's carapace, but 2 more raiders were closing fast. Brisbane. This is Admiral Chun, came the voice over the communication channel. Can you break free from that grappler? Negative, sir, replied the Brisbane's captain, her voice tight with strain. They've breached our main reactor containment. If we try to pull away, the whole ship goes up. Princess Zarethak gripped the armrests of her command chair as the Imperial's pride raced through the asteroid field. Her ship was still 2 minutes away from the battle, and she could see the situation deteriorating rapidly. The second Kethmori vessel had attached itself to the Brisbane's starboard side, while the third was moving to attack the Washington directly. Your Highness, General Korthax reported from the weapons station, we're in extreme range. I could attempt a precision shot at the grappler connections. Too risky, Zarethak replied. If we miss, we'll hit the Brisbane. Get us closer. On the main screen, she watched as Admiral Chun made a decision that defied all military logic. Instead of maintaining safe distance and providing fire support, The Washington moved in close to the Brisbane and used its own hull to ram the second Kethmori raider. The impact sent both ships spinning, but it freed the cruiser from the alien's grasp. The admiral was fighting like a Veltar warrior, using his own ship as a weapon to protect his people. But humans weren't built for such tactics. Their vessels lacked the heavy armor and redundant systems that would let them survive ramming attacks. Even as Zarethak watched, she could see hull breaches opening along the Washington's port side. "All fighters," Admiral Chun's voice came through the communications array. "Focus fire on the remaining grappler. Brisbane, prepare for emergency jump to minimum safe distance." The human fighter craft swarmed around the still-attached Kethmori vessel, the smaller weapons chipping away at the organic connections holding it to the Brisbane's hull. But the raiders had evolved to resist such attacks. Their living ships could absorb tremendous punishment and keep functioning. That's when Princess Zarethak saw her opportunity. "General, target the junction point between the raider and the Brisbane," she commanded. "Plasma lance, minimum dispersal, maximum penetration." "That's an extremely difficult shot, Your Highness. 1 degree off target and we'll hit the human ship." "I'm aware of the risks." "Fire when ready." The Imperial's Pride had finally closed to effective range. On the targeting display, Zarethak could see the delicate intersection where the Kethmori vessel's boarding claws penetrated the Brisbane's hull. It was a shot that required absolute precision, the kind of marksmanship that separated elite gunners from merely competent ones. The plasma lance fired in a brilliant, purple beam that crossed the space between ships in microseconds. The energy struck exactly at the connection point, vaporizing the organic grappling mechanisms and cauterizing the breach in one precise stroke. The Kethmori raider tumbled away from the Brisbane, trailing atmospheric gases and biological fluids. "Brisbane is free," came the jubilant call from the human cruiser. "Engines coming online now." But the battle was far from over. The third Kethmori vessel, larger than the others, had closed with the damaged Washington. Instead of grappling, this one was using some kind of directed energy weapon that ate through the human ship's armor like acid. Admiral Cheon's flagship was dying by inches, its return fire becoming sporadic as systems failed. "Your Highness," General Korthak said urgently, "we should withdraw. Our primary mission is to protect you, not—" "Our mission," Zarethak interrupted, "is to forge an alliance with humanity? That alliance means nothing if we abandon them in their moment of need." Attack pattern Veltar 7, full power to forward shields. The Imperial's Pride charged directly at the Kethmori capital ship, all weapons blazing. The raider turned to meet this new threat, its bioenergy weapon switching targets to the approaching Veltar vessel. Where the alien energy touched her ship's shields, they flared and sparked but held firm. Veltar defensive technology was generations ahead of human systems. As they closed the distance, Zarethak could see details of the enemy vessel through the main viewer. The thing was massive, easily twice the size of her ship, its hull covered in sensor organs and weapon clusters that twitched and moved like living tissue. Somewhere inside that nightmare, she knew, were hundreds of Kethmori warriors waiting to pour into any ship they could breach. "Close to ramming distance," she ordered. "Your Highness," General Korthax protested. "At this range, their boarding parties will never reach us," Zarethak finished. "Because we're not boarding them. We're going to do something they won't expect." The two ships were almost touching now, so close that the Kethmori vessel filled the entire forward viewer. Its organic weapons had stopped firing, unable to target something so near. The alien ship began extending grappling claws, preparing to latch on and begin boarding operations. "Now," Zarethak commanded quietly, the Imperials. Pride fired every weapon it carried directly into the Kethmori ship's hull at point-blank range. Plasma cannons, missile launchers, particle beams, and energy torpedoes all discharged simultaneously. At such close range, even the raiders' regenerating armor couldn't absorb the assault. The alien vessel came apart in seconds, its organic components vaporizing under the incredible energy release. The explosion hurled both the Imperial's Pride and the Washington away from the destruction site. Zarethak felt her ship shudder under the impact, but the Veltar shields held. Emergency klaxons wailed throughout the vessel as damage control teams rushed to repair overloaded. "Systems, status report," she called, out as the bridge crew worked to restore full functionality. "Minor damage to secondary systems," General Korthax reported, his voice filled with professional respect. "That was expertly executed, Your Highness?" On the main screen, she could see the rest of the battle winding down. The remaining Kethmori vessels, apparently discouraged by the loss of their largest ship, were withdrawing toward the system's edge. The combined human-Veltar fleet had suffered damage but remained intact. Most importantly, they had protected Earth and all its billions of inhabitants. "Princess," Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication system, "that was some of the finest shooting I've ever witnessed. You saved my ship and my crew." "We saved each other, Admiral," she replied. "That's what allies do." As the Imperial's pride moved to rejoin the fleet formation, Zarathak found herself looking at the human vessels with new eyes. She had seen their courage under fire, their willingness to sacrifice for each other, and their ability to work with former enemies when faced with a common threat. These weren't the weak primitives her people believed them to be. They were something far more dangerous and admirable. They were warriors who fought not for conquest, but for each other. The realization changed everything about her upcoming marriage. This wasn't a diplomatic sacrifice anymore. It was the foundation of something genuinely meaningful.